Ik ben Lieve Wiering van België. Ik ben voorzitter van de Raad van Bestuur van DICE.
Ja sam Zorana Maravić, dolazim iz Srbije I ja vodim organizaciju DICE.
Sunt Andy Cârlan, sunt Patient Advisory Committee member la DICE și sunt din România.
I'm Lisa Wild from Bowel Cancer UK in the United Kingdom.
Ik ben professor Erik van Kutsem, hoofd van de afdeling Digestieve Oncologie in de universitaire ziekenhuizen Gasthuisberg, Leuven en aan de KU Leuven, België.
Mă numesc Alina Comănescu și reprezint Asociația Sănătate pentru Comunitatea din România.
Pozdravljeni, moje ime je Maja Južnic Sotlar in prihajam iz Slovenije. Sem podpredsednica Združenja Europa Colon Slovenija, ki je polnopravna članica krovne organizacije Digestive Cancers Europe.
Mä olen Jenni Tamminen-Sirkiä. Työskentelen toiminnanjohtajana Coloresissa, Suomen suolistosyöpäyhdistyksessä.
Labdien! Mani sauc Lāsma. Es pārstāvu Onko-aliansi, pacientu organizāciju, kas ir dalība organisācija, jumta organisācijā DICE.
Mitt namn är Eva Backman. Jag är norsk av födsel och svensk av kärlek. Och jag är medlem av DICE patient advocacy-gruppen.
My name is Steve Rowley and I'm from the UK. And I'm a member of the Patient Advisory Committee of DICE.
Hoi, ik ben Vincent de Jong uit Nederland en ik werk voor de Stichting Darmkanker.
We are DICE!
Okay, good morning everyone. We would like to say good morning and thank you for taking your time to be with us online today to talk about early onset colorectal cancer. Since 2008, DICE have been organizing ECCAM, which is European Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. And this year we have decided to focus on younger patients. And in case you're wondering, your cameras and your mics will be automatically turned off. If you have questions throughout this meeting, you can put them in the question and answer area of the Zoom platform, and we'll answer them after all the presentations have been finished. So I'm sure you know our agenda by now, and because time is of the essence, whatever aspect of life, we're going to go straight to our first intervention, which will be a video intervention from Zorana Maravić. Zorana Maravić, many of you have known her. She has dedicated over a decade of her life to raising awareness about colorectal cancer, first with Europa Colon and now as a CEO of DICE. She's passionate about health education, has a background in molecular biology, and also an MBA in health management. So now we're going to hear from Zorana.
Good morning everyone. I'm Zorana Maravić, the CEO of Digestive Cancers Europe. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to share our campaign with you today. This is the second time I'm addressing you, urging you to join us in walking for colorectal cancer during the month of March. Together, we have taken an incredible 421.4 million steps since last year. We have already circumnavigated the Earth multiple times. Now we are just a few million steps away from reaching the moon. We are truly grateful for the positive feedback we have received about our STEP app. But what thrills us even more is seeing so many young people taking up the challenge. And this leads me to the focus of this year's event and campaign: the impact of cancer diagnosis when you are not expected to be at risk. It's a shock like no other. You may have seen headlines and experienced it among your own friends and families. Colorectal cancer is increasingly affecting younger individuals. That's why we have decided to center this year's campaign around those below the age of 50, who may not fall within the official recommendations. In 2022, we warmly welcome the updated EU's cancer screening recommendations. However, we understand that guidelines must be built on sound science and evidence, and that takes time. But when it comes to cancer, time is not a luxury we can afford to wait for. That's why at DICE we strive to identify trends early and raise awareness among the public, policy makers and decision makers where it truly matters. Today's event aims to shed light on this concerning trend and help us all find feasible solutions together. I'm confident that as a digestive cancer community, we have the determination to reverse this trend. And I have hope that all concerned stakeholders will join us in our efforts. Thank you all for being a part of Digestive Cancers Europe. Together, let's step forward towards a brighter future.
Okay, now we'll hear from the chair of the DICE board, Lieve Werving. Lieve has a very unique perspective on the topic, being a colon cancer survivor herself and experienced politician. She served in the Belgian Parliament from 2011 till 2014. She also served in the European Parliament till 2019 in the ITRE committee, where she was working towards improved innovation and competitiveness for Europe. Lieve, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to meet with us today. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the European Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month ECCAM 2024 launch event. For those of you who know DICE and have followed our precious events, you will know that this topic will always be close to the core of DICE's activities. DICE originated from Europa Colon, meaning that for the last 16 years, we have organized a campaign every year to raise awareness about colorectal cancer. Unfortunately, after nearly 2 decades of our members' work and 2 sets of EU screening recommendations, colorectal cancer levels are still unacceptable high in Europe. Colorectal cancer is the second most frequently occurring cancer after breast cancer and the second cause of cancer death after lung cancer. Let me repeat the second cause of cancer death. What is even more worrying is that we can absorb more cases of early onset colorectal cancer, meaning increase in number of people diagnosed before the age of 50. That is why we have decided to focus this year's event on this topic. While we do not have enough statistics for Europe, we can observe that globally the cases of early onset colorectal cancer more than doubled since the 90s. No matter what age, though, the best way to reduce colorectal cancer risk is to engage in regular physical activity and healthy lifestyle habits. This is what we have been trying to foster over the years with ECCAM. We are hoping that this March you will all take steps to reduce your colorectal cancer risks. First, commit to a healthy lifestyle. If you don't know how to do it, ask for the help from healthcare professionals. Second, find out about colorectal cancer and check if you have any systems. You can find them on the ECCAM website. Third, take part in your national screening program. From my side, I would like to thank all our partners and sponsors for their support and our member organizations for their commitments to bringing the campaign to a national level. DICE always remains at your disposal if you have any questions. We are here to step up and prevent colorectal cancer together.
Thank you, Lieve. And now we will virtually move geographically from Belgium, Brussels, what they call the heart of Europe, to Romania. Our next speaker is Andy Carlan. He's a member of a DICE Patient Advisory Committee, proud father of 2 daughters, social media influencer, and a successful insurance sector professional. Andy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alexandra. And thank you everybody for joining us here. I'm a cancer survivor myself, still fighting with it since 2019. I was diagnosed with colorectal cancer at the age of 36, when nobody, including myself, ever thought that I could be a viable candidate for colorectal cancer. So together with myself, also the doctors that have seen me ignored some of my symptoms because they weren't statistically associated to the colorectal cancer. But nevertheless, 6 months later, I ended up doing a colonoscopy and found out that I'm a privileged member of this select community of young colorectal cancer patients. And that was the moment when I made it my personal mission to contribute to the awareness that Liv was also speaking about, and to try, as long as I live, to help as many young patients as I can to defeat this evil disease, which takes more and more lives, unfortunately, by the years. And this is shortly my mission here. I'm trying to convince as many people as I can that a healthy lifestyle, not in an extreme way, but in a balanced way, it's of the essence. Also, physical activity and having some regular medical checkups done. Even though you are 20 or 30 or 40 years old. And maybe one of the most important aspects of this journey is to try to listen to your body and maybe not doing such a great job ignoring the symptoms and the signals that our bodies wisely sends to us. So thank you everyone again for this great opportunity to speak about the importance of the colorectal cancer awareness, and bringing up the fact once more that this type of disease does not actually have a proper age. It can affect both people after 50 or 60 years old, but in the same manner, it can affect people of 20, 30, 40 years old. So I invite you all in joining our efforts to raise awareness and to help people speak up about this disease, because it's still unfortunately one of the diseases which is stigmatized, and unfortunately, in my almost 5 years experience, only a handful of patients are willing to openly discuss about it. Many of the young colorectal cancer patients are trying to hide it from different reasons, starting with shame and desire to protect the loved ones. But unfortunately, as much as we try to hide it, it will continue to come out and affect more and more people. So if together we can manage to convince more young colorectal patients to speak up about this disease and their experience, I think we can manage to give one more chance to those patients and to others which are in desperate need of it.
Thank you very much, Andy, for your intervention. Now we're going to move on to the introductory remarks by members of the European Parliament, who unfortunately could not be live present with us, but they send us video messages. So first we'll hear from an Irish MEP, Cluna, who's from European People's Party, and she has been also a supporter of last year's ECCAM campaign. She is sitting in the European Parliament in the IMCO committee, and she's also a substitute in the ENVI committee and SAND subcommittee that was established last year. Then we'll hear from the Croatian MEP, Jerkovic, who is a member of the Progressive Alliance for Socialists and Democrats. She is sitting in the ITRE and ENVI committees and was also a member of a temporary COVID-19 committee and a temporary committee to do with the European Beating Cancer Plan. She herself is a medical doctor, and she's also a professor and head of the Department of Anatomy and Faculty of Medicine in Rijeka. So I'll ask my colleague Luca to play the two videos for you now.
Good morning. I'm Deirdre Clune, MEP for Ireland South, and it's a pleasure to say a few words to begin today's event. During the 10 years that I've served as an MEP, I've seen many health initiatives passing through the European Parliament. However, it's essential that we effectively translate these initiatives into tangible results for citizens' health. And so it's with great pleasure that I welcome the Digestive Health Europe campaign to raise awareness around colorectal cancer. As you will hear from our speakers today, colorectal cancer is one of the most prevalent cancers. Unfortunately, a lack of awareness and low participation in screening programs leads to increased mortality rates. And while the majority of EU countries have a population-based colorectal cancer screening program in place, only 7 countries align with the Council's recommendation to perform fecal immunochemical testing for those aged 50 to 74. In Ireland, participation rates in colorectal cancer screening programs are only at 50%, which, while higher than EU average, is quite clearly not good enough. We cannot allow a lack of awareness and inequalities in screening programs to exacerbate cancer mortality. Over the last few years, we have observed an increase in early onset of cancers, including colorectal cancer. Europe urgently needs a strong commitment to address early onset cancer prevention, diagnosis, treatment and care. And this calls for focused research to understand the underlying causes and risk factors and requires efforts to raise awareness and advocate for early detection and intervention strategies, particularly tailored to the younger population. So as an MEP and a European citizen, I want to see the European Beating Cancer Plan delivering on its promises to all Europeans, no matter their address, age, gender, or any other factor. And if we want the Beating Cancer Plan to be successful, we need engagement from all partners. And so with this in mind, I hope that this March we'll see the Step Up for Colorectal Cancer and encourage as many of our family members, friends, colleagues and citizens to not only become more physically active by walking for colorectal cancer, but also take the first steps to make themselves more aware of risk factors and of screening programs. I wish you all a productive discussion, and I look forward to all the positive steps we can take together for colorectal cancer.
Thank you, Luca. And if we could have the MEP Jerkovic video as well.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the launch event of the European Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. Every year, 500,000 citizens in Europe are diagnosed with colorectal cancer. In 2020, colorectal cancer accounted for almost 13% of all new cancer diagnoses and 12% of all deaths due to cancer. That made it second most frequently occurring cancer and the second cause of cancer death. Ladies and gentlemen, the time to act is now. Prevention, early diagnosis and population-based screening programs are the best tools that we have at hand to fight colorectal cancer. Almost 2 years ago, we have adopted new recommendations for colorectal cancer screening. However, the uptake remains alarmingly low. For example, in my home country, Croatia, participation rate in colorectal cancer screening program is just around 25%. The EU average is 36%, but that is also very low. These numbers are unacceptable, and we have to do more to raise awareness among our citizens and governments. With this in mind, I would like to encourage everyone to step up this march for colorectal cancer. I wish you all good discussions at this launch webinar, and I'm looking forward to working together with all of you in making the EU goals in colorectal cancer prevention a reality. Thank you.
So now that we have heard from the politicians, we will go back to the patient's perspective. And at DICE, patient stories drive us, they inspire us, they move us forward, and they are core of our work. So now I'll pass on to my colleague, Mariana, who has spent a good part of last year looking at patient stories of younger cancer patients. She has been working on the colorectal cancer book project that she will present to us now. Mariana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alessandra, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending this year ECCAM launch event. As our CEO Zorana mentioned in her introduction, and as the event title suggests, today we are going to hear from experts and patients about the alarming spread of colorectal cancer among people under the age of 50 that is referred to as early onset colorectal cancer. DICE has been working intensively on this topic for the last few years, demonstrating our commitment to spreading information about early onset colorectal cancer and its prevention. Today, I have the honor of sharing with you a project that my colleagues and I have been working on for the past few months, a book titled "You Are Too Young, But It Might Be Cancer." In this book, we have collected 16 stories of young people affected by colorectal cancer. Many of them had never heard of this cancer before due to their young age. Instead, this disease impacts them during what is typically considered the most active and dynamic period of life, building a family, raising children, and dreaming of a career, among other things. The stories are organized into 6 chapters describing different parts of the patient journey, from the mostly unexpected diagnosis and its impact on the life of young individuals, to treatment with all its physical and mental consequences and the impact of daily life, up to the advice each of them wished they had received and are now sharing with the public to help those facing the similar situation. Finally, we have a last chapter of the book that is a collection of reflection on the disease and life before and after it. The young protagonists of the book come from 9 different European countries, leading different lives, by showing us how courage and resilience, along with the support of their loved ones, are essential in facing colorectal cancer. Some of them have shared why they wanted to participate in this project and share the story with us. Let's hear from them what's their message in this short video.
I hope my story encourages people to approach their GPs with any symptoms that they have.
Today I share my story to prevent others from going through the same. No more hearing "you're too young", no more delayed treatments.
I shared my story because I want to break the stereotype that colorectal cancer is a disease of the elderly, which often leads to delayed diagnosis in young cancer patients and to the treatment that doesn't fully meet the needs of young people. I also dare to talk about very uncomfortable and discreet symptoms of bowel cancer to encourage others, not to be ashamed, but to seek help and to communicate about them openly.
Shortly after I started chemotherapy, I decided to publicly share my story in detail with useful information and recommendations, hoping that by doing this I will help other cancer patients to understand what they are facing, how to fight it and how to adapt to their new oncologic patient life. how to find the best doctors for them and get second opinion.
Sharing my story is a spark that helps light the way in our fight against cancer and the push for early detection. I hope that someday someone will read my story and decide to visit the doctor they've been putting off. Life is precious and we must cherish it as much as we can. I know that I will do my best to do so.
So all the protagonists of this book have shared the story altruistically to support DICE in its mission of raising awareness of this global phenomenon of the decreasing age of patients affected by digestive tumors. Supporting early detection is key to ensuring better outcomes and quality of life for every patient. As a sign of appreciation, as you saw in the video, for your participation, each participant in today's event will receive an email with a link to download the book for free during March. Thank you again to the protagonists of the book, and thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Mariana. And we will have the chance to hear from some of the patient stories themselves, as they will be one of the speakers today. So now we have a great pleasure to welcome Professor Dr. Manon Spande. She is a professor in early detection and screening at the Department of Gastroenterology and Hepatology at the Erasmus University in Rotterdam. And her clinical work and research focuses on prevention and early detection of gastrointestinal cancers. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, she was one of the first ones to start publishing about this phenomenon. So, Professor Spande, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning to you all. And I also want to thank the organization that I may speak to you today on this important topic. And I hope to provide you some new insights on why we do think that there's an increase in early onset colorectal cancer and the risk factors and what we can do. So I hope you can see my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, now I must see how I can move towards my screen. I'm sorry. So these are my conflicts of interest.
I think we can still see your first slide. Would you like one of us to maybe share your screen, share your slides?
Can you send the next slide? Yeah? Okay, I will do it like this. Okay.
Perfect.
So let's take a look at the overall colorectal cancer incidence, because the good news is that we see with colorectal cancer incidence over the age of 50, so in patients getting colorectal cancer 50 years or older, then we see a decrease in colorectal cancer incidence, especially in the developed countries. And this is due to screening programs that has been implemented and colonoscopy surveillance. And although we see this decreasing incidence in the people 50 years and older, there is an opposite trend for the early onset colorectal cancer. As you can see here, there's an increase in those below the age of 50, and it was firstly shown in the US, but rapidly followed also by other countries like Australia, Canada, even in China. And also we showed that in Europe, in the majority of countries in Europe, there's an increase in patients getting colorectal cancer below the age of 50. So therefore we have defined a new identity, defining it as early onset colorectal cancer or young onset colorectal cancer, meaning any patients that developed colorectal cancer below the age of 50. And if you look at the underlying causes, then we think that in around 20% of these patients, it can be explained by a hereditary disorder. However, in the majority of patients, it's still unknown why these patients develop colorectal cancer at such a young age. What we do know is that this is caused by so-called birth cohort phenomenon. You can see it here. You can see here the birth cohorts on the x-axis. And what you can see is that patients born since 1950 have more risk of getting early onset colorectal cancers than before. So the question is, what happens since the 1950 that can explain why we see so much more patients with colorectal cancer at such a young age? And actually there happens a lot since the 1950s, both on medical treatment advances, for example, the medicines and antibiotics. The 1950s is also referred to the golden age of antibiotics, as you can see here. So before the 1950, we had only one antibiotic, the penicillin. But since 1950, many other new antibiotic classes has been discovered and also antibiotic resistance developed. Besides these advances in medical treatment, we had also the Industrial Revolution, especially the car industry. And while before the 1950, everybody went to work walking or cycling, now in each house there is a car on the driveway, bringing you to work and home, shopping, vacation. And when you come home, you now sit down and look television. And after the development of the television, we had the computer, which also changes our jobs. Most of our jobs are now behind desk, behind the screen. And the computer was now not only available for jobs, but also a toy for the children sitting down and playing games instead of fooling around outside. Then we had the development of the mobile phone. And although the word is suggesting that we're getting more mobile, the mobile phone finally developed in a smartphone, now enabling us to sit down everywhere and watch the screen videos on TikTok or YouTube, as most of the young adults do now. So the Industrial Revolution has given us a lot of new technology, but also provided us a more sedentary lifestyle. And while these changes in lifestyle occurred, there was also a change in dietary factors. Because since the 1950s, many fast food restaurants became apparent. And we started to eat less vegetables, fruits, and fibers, eat more processed meat, more sugar drinks. And while first we may order our fast food by walking to the desk, order the fast food, going back and eat it, currently you can order your food, eat it, while actually doing not one step for eating your food. So here you can see the good thing of all the advantages. So beside on the XS, you see the different technology, the Industrial Revolution, the medical improvements, and that resulted in this black line where you see that our life expectancy increases, which is a good thing. We're getting older. But the bad thing is this gray line. You see, since the 1950s, there's a rapidly increase, and this gray line is the percentages of people having overweight or obesity. And you see that it's actually doubled. Now let's take a look at the risk factors associated with the early onset colorectal cancers. And all these risk factors are all causing biodifferences in lifestyle and dietary. Obesity, physical inactivity, and due to the increase in obesity and physical inactivity, we see also more patients with diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, eating less vegetables, fruit, fibers, and vegetables, more processed meats, and use of antibiotics or medications. All these risk factors have one thing in common, and that each of them affects the gut microbiome. And we do know that the gut microbiome plays a role in the development of colorectal cancer. So that's why we do think that these risk factors are probably also play a role in the early onset of colorectal cancer. And here you see an overview, and I would not go in it with you in detail, but just an overview to let you show how we think that each of these dietary and environmental factors affect the microbiome and then affect the process of cancer development. So some of the factors like physical activity, eating more fibers, enhance or stimulate some bacteria that helps us to reduce inflammation while obesity provides us a status of continuous inflammation. Red or processed meat stimulate some bacteria that are causing DNA damages. And the DNA damages are, again, starting the process of carcinogenesis. However, if you look at the absolute number of people getting colorectal cancer at a young age, then you can see here above the increase and here the decrease in colorectal cancer below the age of older than 50 years of older. But if you look at the y-axis and the absolute numbers, then you see that there is an increase with now 6.6 per 100,000 people getting colorectal cancer at a younger age, compared to 130 in those older than 50. So absolute numbers of early onsets are fortunately low. So if we think that the risk factors I showed to you contribute directly to the development of colorectal cancer, then we would expect that more people would have colorectal cancer at a younger age. Unfortunately, that's not the case. That's why we think it may be more complex than only the risk factors. And we do think that during your lifetime, there can be multiple events causing differences in your gut microbiome, but also changes in genetics. And this interaction between a change in genes and change in microbiome is causing that in some of the people, colorectal cancer can develop. So this can be multiple events during lifetime, but eventually result in colorectal cancer development. And I showed you some of the risk factors, but there are maybe other risk factors, as you can see over here, that we do not know of, that also may play a role in this genetic exposure interaction. So what can we do? I think the best thing what we can do is identify those young adults with an increase of colorectal cancer, because if we know who's getting the colorectal cancer, we can screen them and survey them. However, we only can do this in those with a known hereditary disorders. That's the people we can screen and survey. But as I showed you, in the majority of patients, it is rather unknown who is at risk for early onset colorectal cancer and who to screen. And I will not go into the screening that much because I do know that Professor Colin Fraser will go more in detail on this. But making the fact that there's not that much people having early onset colorectal cancers is also a problem to start screening. But what can we do? It's already said, but I think important is prevention and awareness, creating awareness. So let's start with the prevention. I showed you the risk factors, and in the majority of these risk factors are actually risk factors where we can do something about. Try to reduce weight, exercise more, eat more fruit, vegetable and fibers, and less processed meat. That's all we can do. On the other hand, I think it is important to state that if a patient develops colorectal cancer, we should not justify the patients and saying it's your own fault because you have an unhealthy life. It is not a direct correlation. This is just, as I showed you, it's more complex and there's something we can do, but please don't justify patients if they have the colorectal cancer developed at a young age, but also in the late onset colorectal cancer. Based on the fact that we cannot screen all these young adults because we don't know which of them will develop colorectal cancers, I think the only thing we can do to reduce mortality due to early onset colorectal cancer is to diagnose the colorectal cancer as early as possible. And that's why it's important to know the signs and symptoms of early onset colorectal cancer. And you see in the young onset population that the majority of patients have rectal bleeding. And then followed by abdominal pain, change in bowel habit, unexplained weight loss, and anemia. And although these symptoms are also the same alarm symptoms for late onset colorectal cancer, we do see that in patients diagnosed with colorectal cancer at a younger age are more often diagnosed at an advanced stage compared to the older population. And of course, this is due to the fact that we don't screen this population, but we also think this is caused by the fact that the time to diagnose it is increased in the younger. And we already heard it from the patients. It can be on a patient level because there's a lack of risk awareness. The patient believes that he or she is too young to worry about cancer. But it can also be on a doctor level with the dismissal of symptoms, misattribution of symptoms to more benign condition. The rectal bleeding is diagnosed due to hemorrhage instead of rectal cancer. So how can we solve this? By ensure that in case there is a cancer, there is colorectal cancer, that it is also timely diagnosed and therefore hope to reduce the mortality to this disease. And here I think it's a nice figure that published a few years ago, Gastroenterology, showing how important it is to identify the patients by knowing the symptoms, knowing the red flag symptoms, the rectal bleeding, the abdominal pain, etc. Then decide, do we send the patient directly for colonoscopy or other workup? But in case you diagnose it as a benign disorder, close the loop. See the patient back within 2 months. Ask if it's resolved. If not, then still decide for colonoscopy. And it's also important, I think, something to create this awareness with patients. Don't be reassured when the doctor says it's a benign disorder. If the symptoms do not resolve, go back to the doctor. Maybe ask for another workup. So coming to my conclusions, I showed you in 1/5 we can explain it's the fact that the young people develop colorectal cancer. However, in the majority of cases, it is unknown. What we do think is that lifestyle factors that affects the gut microbiome, and especially since the 1950s, I showed you there happened a lot, and especially in a change in our lifestyle and our dietary habits, we do think that these lifestyle factors may play a role in the development of early onset colorectal cancers. But I showed to you also that it is probably more complex by a change in genes and environmental factors that changes the microbiome, and can be multiple events that needed to occur during lifetime before early onset colorectal cancer develop. So what can we do? The identification of patient at risk can currently only be applied to the hereditary cases. So therefore it's so important to see what we can do otherwise, like prevention, by reducing the risk factors, as I showed you, associated with colorectal cancer, and create awareness. Awareness of red flag symptoms, both for patients and doctors, and close the loop. Be sure it's indeed a benign disorder. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And I think we appreciate the last slide, especially. Now we will hear from a patient perspective. So we will hear from Liliana, who will be talking to us about being diagnosed with a digestive cancer at a very early age, and she will share with us her lessons learned. Liliana, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you very much for joining this rather important event. My name is Liliana, and as you've seen in my short bio, I was diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer at the age of 37. Right, you hearing this correct. Interesting fact about me, and I wanted to make it relatable. Tomorrow I'm doing my 35th round of chemotherapy. Yes, 35 rounds of chemotherapy, which is equivalent of around 150 hours. Imagine what you can do with that time if you don't have to spend it in hospitals having treatment. And this is the message to everyone out there that prevention and early detection of diagnose is everything, and it can change and it can save your life. I will talk briefly about risk factors. I purposely call them controllable risk factors because there is so much we in control of. It's amazing, but I think it's time we have to really utilize our power to prevent this disease. About awareness, education, and knowledge. You see, I was fully aware of bowel cancer. A year before I was diagnosed, my mother-in-law died because of bowel cancer. So I knew about it because it happened closely within our family. Education. This is interesting story. When I was 35-year-old, my mom was doing her routine colonoscopy, and she invited my brother, who's 5 years older, he was 40 at the time, to have routine colonoscopy to be on a safe side. She also recommended this to me. And guess what I did? I laughed at her, not disrespectfully, obviously, but I said to my mom, hang on a minute, it's not related to me. I don't need colonoscopy. Like, I'm not in a risk factor group. So I didn't do screening. And sometimes you do have those reflection in life, how much things could be different if I did that. And knowledge, knowing your symptoms, I think it's everything. And this is the time when we have to educate ourselves and people around us, because unfortunately, no matter where have you been born or how have you been brought up, poo is still a taboo subject. We don't want to talk about it. It still makes us awkward and uncomfortable. But we need to understand that checking our poo can also save our lives, and it can be done very, very, very gently. So this is very, very, very important to be aware of what is happening with our body, because as our fellow panelists said, our body letting us know that things are not right. And this is leading me to next subject, negligence of our well-being. I mean, how often when we have a stomach ache or a backache, we would associate it with bowel cancer, because that's what happened to me. I didn't put two and two together because I thought it's probably something I ate, or it's probably, work, or something, about our diet. And this is also crucial to be aware of what is happening to us, and do not neglect as slightest changes in our day-to-day existence, because as I've already mentioned, our body is incredible, and when things are not right, it's letting us know. It's informing us that we have to do something about it. And that will lead me to the next thing, because when we're going to make finally this brave decision of going to see doctors, we have to be persistent, and we have to demand tests. And I do understand that we do trust medical authorities, but also we have to trust our instinct, because very often when we have mild symptoms like changing bowel habits or stomach ache, those symptoms might not necessarily be straight away associated with bowel cancer, especially when you're young. And very often, unfortunately, this might be associated with something different. And believe or not, I have met thousands of people who've been misdiagnosed. And like we know, time is crucial when it comes to fight this terrible disease. That's why it's so important. Because believe or not, if I wasn't persistent with doctors, if I wasn't be this awkward and annoying patient who wanted to know the answers, because when I find out about my disease, I remember this exactly. I cried for about 30 seconds, and then I went into my usual mode of resolving problems. That's what I was always good at, and I wanted to know what we're doing next. And believe or not, doctors wanted to send me home, discharge me from hospital, and I said no. I disagree with doctor at the time, who was nota bene from colorectal department. I said I wanted to know more. I demanded to see head of colorectal department. I demanded to see gynecologist, because there was involvement of tumors there as well. And I demanded to see my results. And because I did that, and because I was this annoying, awkward, asking question patient, the very same day, I been transferred to a different hospital, and I had operation which saved my life at the time. And this is so important, to be able to stand up for yourself and be persistent, be resilient when it comes to conversation with medical personnel, because we're talking about our lives here in danger. And our instinct is telling us always when things are not right, and we have to closely listen to ourselves. We have to go back to basics, listen to our body and our instinct, because whether you're ill or not, our body does tremendous things for us. I quickly move to next subject, which is sudden and drastic changes to our lifestyle. And please understand, I don't want to say healthy diet and exercising are bad for you. This is absolutely nothing what I'm saying. But very often we're experiencing under influence of somebody or someone, some sort of awakening, and we want to be healthy straight away, just like that, overnight, and we're changing absolutely everything. But what I'm advising and what I'm suggesting to do is to do those changes gently, be nice and be kind to our body, because as Professor Spander said, we still don't know what is triggering this disease. So when we're changing things, we have to be cautious about changes we are making, and simply be gentle and kind with ourselves and with our bodies. Lastly, I'll talk about stress, diet, and life balance disruptions. We all know about bad influence of stress. And I think resources are extraordinary nowadays when we can find something which works for ourselves, how to reduce stress and how to deal with it. Diet. You see, myself, I was always eating relatively healthy. The only thing which I was abusing for sure was sugar, because I love cakes, all sort of cakes, apple pie, tiramisu, you name it. So that was something I was 100% abusing. An interesting fact about myself, when the time before I was diagnosed, I went completely off sugar. And believe it or not purposely, my body suddenly didn't want any sugar. But what I was craving sauerkraut, sour cabbage, kimchi, kefir. And when you're thinking about it, what those things are doing to our body, those products supporting our gut microbiome. And what does gut microbiome do for us? It supports our immune system. So my body was unconsciously sending some information to myself to support body to fight this disease. And just in conclusion, we can see how many things we in control of and how many things we have influence on. So I just hope this message will help other people, by baby steps, by talking to our friends and family, influence them to get screening and look after ourselves, look after themselves. Because I got all my close family and work colleagues to get screening, whether that was fit test to detect blood in the poo or whether that was colonoscopy. They did it, and maybe I made small difference, and I hope this message will reach out to more people so we can save more lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Liliana. And I'm sure you did make a difference. And I think you've seen how many hearts you've got from our audience. So we did hear the message. We will be the awkward and annoying patients, and we'll be empowering patients to be awkward and annoying as much as they can. Now we're going to move on, and we have a great pleasure to talk about screening with an established expert, Professor Callum Fraser. He has published over 400 papers and articles, 14 book chapters, and has 2 monographs translated into multiple languages. Over the last 2 decades, he's been working on colorectal cancer screenings in the UK and also bowel screening in Scotland. He's received a number of awards and honors, just to name a few: the Foundation Award and honorary membership of the Association of Clinical Biochemistry, Laboratory Medicine, and the European Federation of Clinical Chemistry and Laboratory Medicine in 2017 for lifetime achievements. So Professor Fraser, we're very happy you're here with us, and we are looking forward to hearing about screening from you.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to presenting some data from Scotland to help us look at the bowel cancer in younger people. And could I have my PowerPoint, please?
Yes, we'll be on it. Well, we can take this moment all to stand up a little bit while we're getting the PowerPoint, maybe. It's on. There we go.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And today I'm going to mainly talk about fecal immunochemical tests, that is FIT, in colorectal cancer screening in younger people. And very interestingly, a recent systematic review and meta-analysis in the journal Cancers had a number of interesting statements. For example, the incidence of early onset colorectal cancer is increasing, and this is a fact. Many guidelines recommend initiating screening at 45 years now, and that is also a fact. There are also some interesting, rather subjective statements. For example, the detection rate of advanced colorectal neoplasia and colorectal cancer based on FIT in individuals aged 40 to 49 years is acceptable. So what's acceptable? And the yield of ACRN might be similar between individuals aged 45 to 49 and 50 to 59. So what's might be mean? So there are still a lot of unanswered questions. Next. Could I have the next slide, please? What we should note, however, is that current guidelines are rather inconsistent. For example, very recently, at the end of 2023 last year, the American College of Physicians said CRC screening should wait until age 50 for average risk asymptomatic adults. And that obviously is in contrast with some other guidelines. For example, the American Cancer Society and the US Preventative Services Task Force, which suggested that CRC screening, recommended that CRC screening should begin at age 45. And the rationale of the ACP was CRC incidence has slightly increased in persons younger than 50, and the net benefit of screening is much less favourable in average risk adults between the ages of 45 to 49 than in those aged 50 to 75. Next. So what we ought to also note is that bowel cancer, at least in our country, is very, very newsworthy. And after the publication of a wonderful paper in the Annals of Oncology, The Guardian said death rates amongst those aged 25 to 49, this is in the UK, are predicted to increase by 39% among women and 26% among men in 2024, compared with the average between 2015 and 2019. And one of the Scottish daily papers said there's a bowel cancer surge, a grim increase in this disease killing young people due to booze and obesity, as we've heard from Professor Spander. So next, we have wonderful health data in Scotland, and here I can show you CRC incidence in Scotland, and you can see at the top, 50 to 74-year-olds, that there is evidence, as we've seen, that the incidence of colorectal cancer is going down, particularly after the introduction of a nationwide screening programme. In the population less than 50 years in Scotland, again, you can see that certainly there is a strong indication that the CRC incidence is increasing over recent years. But as others have pointed out, note the scale of the y-axis, that less than 50 years, about 6, above 50 years in the screening age range, it's about 20 times that. Next, please. And now looking at CRC mortality in Scotland over a period of 30 years, in the top panel, again, you can see 50 to 74-year-olds, that the top line is men, the bottom line is women. And there's some evidence that CRC mortality in Scotland is falling in men, but for the last 20 years, there's very little evidence that mortality is being reduced in Scotland, even with the introduction of a nationwide screening programme. So women are disadvantaged. Now, if we look at the bottom panel, then we can see that in the less than 50 years, although the confidence intervals are very wide, there is evidence of an increase in mortality due to CRC over recent years. And in particular, I think the darker line, you can see that the increase in CRC mortality in Scotland is likely to be amongst women rather than men. Next, please. So let's now talk about fecal immunochemical tests, and these have lower costs and fewer staff requirements than colonoscopy. They're specific for human hemoglobin. Only one sample is usually required. They're easy to use with hygienic, well-accepted specimen collection devices. Bleeding from the upper GI tract is not detected, and the real benefit is that quantitative fit give numerical fecal hemoglobin estimates and allow different thresholds to be used for colonoscopy reasons or by factors such as sex and age. And the next slide shows the factors that affect hemoglobin, because we have studied over many years the numerical estimates of fecal hemoglobin concentration using, for example, these easy to collect devices and benchtop analyzers, which give very reproducible results for fecal hemoglobin concentration over time. And we should note that fecal hemoglobin is not a constant. It's associated with age. Fecal hemoglobin concentration rises with age. It's highly associated with sex. Women have much lower levels of fecal hemoglobin than do men. People who are deprived have higher levels than those who are not deprived, less deprived. Fecal hemoglobin varies by country, it varies by FIT system used, and it varies by region. And if we look at the next slide, we can see that we have looked at the fecal hemoglobin concentrations in various percentiles of the distribution, and the results are always the same. Here we can see in women, W, in 4 age groups, increasing age, and in men, M, in 4 groups, again increasing with age. In the Scottish Bowel Screening Programme, which uses Analyzer A, in the Scottish Pilot, which used Analyzer B, you can see throughout that the results with Analyzer A are different to Analyzer B. You can also see that in Taiwan and Florence and Barcelona and in Scotland, the fecal hemoglobin concentrations in men and women in every age group are different. Fecal hemoglobin differs by country and even by region in a small country like Scotland. And very importantly, you can see that although fecal hemoglobin concentration increases by age in all of these groups, they are always higher in men than in women. So women are kind of disadvantaged. And also, if you think about it, if you have a single threshold, let's say at 20 here, then the results, the positivity at least, will be different by analyzer, by country, by age, and by sex. Next slide, please. And here we see the fecal hemoglobin distributions in our pilot in Scotland. And you can see, without really going into any detail, that the distribution in females, women, is lower than in males, men. And the next slide shows the really important factor. Next slide, please. The next slide shows the really important factor that if you wish the same positivity for men and for women, then you need to use different fecal hemoglobin thresholds. And I will use this idea that women and men are different to show you some factors that affect hemoglobin concentration and to show you how we can use data very important data on numerical fecal hemoglobin concentrations to improve screening programs. Next slide, please. So here's data from our FIT pilot evaluation in Scotland, and you can see in the numerical table that at any fecal hemoglobin threshold, the positivity decreases as you would expect as the fecal hemoglobin concentration increases, the threshold increases. But you can also see that women always at any threshold, at all the thresholds possible, women have lower positivity than men. Fewer women are further investigated, and the cancer detection rate is lower. Now, if you look at the right-hand panel showing this in picture format, in Scotland, we have very little colonoscopy resource, so our cutoff threshold is 80. So if we want equal positivity, then if you look further and further to the left, you will see that if we want equal positivity for men and for women, we would need to use a fecal hemoglobin threshold of about 50. So 80 for men, 50 for women. And the next slide shows interval cancer proportions, a different outcome parameter. And you can see again at the bottom, the green and the blue women, the green men, that positivity is always lower for women than for men at any fecal hemoglobin threshold. But really importantly, if you look at the red line, which is women, interval cancer, and the blue line, interval cancer proportion for men, the red line is always higher. Women have more interval cancers at any threshold than do men. And if we wanted to have the similar number of interval cancers in women and in men, if we leave men at 80, so they're not disadvantaged, we would need to get equal interval cancer proportions about a threshold of 40. So 80 for men, 40 for women. So we can use knowledge about fecal hemoglobin concentrations to design better screening programs, and perhaps we ought to consider this when we're thinking about screening for younger people less than the usual starting age of 50. Next slide, please. So I think there are a number of challenges that we ought to think about. Challenge one is that there doesn't seem to be much data on fecal hemoglobin concentration distributions in young people. In the Cancers Review, there were 10 studies mentioned, over 500,000 FIT results. And you can see that overall, the FIT positivity rate was 4.9% for younger people and 7.3% for the average risk groups. So in young people, there's no doubt that fecal hemoglobin concentrations will be lower than in older people, but what are the factors affecting fecal hemoglobin in younger people? We don't know because they haven't been investigated, and that's a challenge. Next slide, please, shows the CRC mortality in Scotland and leads to the question, is 45 the right age to start screening? Because if you look at these 5 yearly groups, it's actually the second from the bottom, 35 to 39-year-olds that seem to have the greatest increase in CRC mortality, and the 30 to 34-year-old who have low mortality, again, you can see an increase, whereas the 45 to 49-year-old look very similar to the 50 to 54-year-old. So that's a challenge. Next, please. The third challenge is that we have to think about colonoscopy and priorities for screening. So clearly in our country and many other countries, we need additional colonoscopy, endoscopy resources and staff. And very, very importantly, we need further wider use of fecal immunochemical tests in assessment of symptomatic patients irrespective of their age, particularly when younger individuals present with the classic red flag symptoms. And we also and there's a little evidence for this already, we also need to use FIT in post-polypectomy surveillance, so that using this in symptomatic patients and in surveillance cuts down uses of colonoscopy other than screening and frees up resources for screening. But remember, there is a competition for colonoscopy resource that we often should think about lowering the fecal hemoglobin threshold to the ideal perhaps of 20. Scotland uses 80. Other countries in the United Kingdom use even higher fecal hemoglobin thresholds at the moment. We should think about lowering the age of first invitation to 50 years in those countries, including some in the United Kingdom, which now start screening at ages higher than 50 years. And also, there's a real need to lower waiting times in many countries for colonoscopy for all clinical applications, including screening. Next slide, please. And the final challenge, I think, is, as I've shown you, that we can manipulate fecal hemoglobin thresholds to design better screening programs. For example, different thresholds for men and women, and perhaps different thresholds for age. But a quandary is, which performance characteristic do we use? Do we use positivity? That's very easy. Do we use interval cancer proportions, which are an indicator of test sensitivity? Should we use specificity, detection rates, risk of cancer, positive predictive value? This, again, is a challenge which requires further investigation. And my last slide concludes that CRC incidence and mortality is undoubtedly increasing in age groups younger than the traditional screening start age of 50 years. Some, but remember not all, recommend now starting screening at 45 years, but I think there are challenges. I think we need to study fecal hemoglobin distributions in the younger population and look at the factors affecting fecal hemoglobin in the younger population. I think we ought to think carefully about the age that we should start screening, if we could ever screen population-based screening in younger people, and 45 actually may not be the correct age to start, and it may be that screening should start at younger, even younger ages. We should think about how we can use better colonoscopy resources and think about the priorities when we are considering changing current screening programs. Perhaps the priorities are not the younger age group, but lowering the age we start screening from above 50, and also lowering the threshold. And also, finally, the choice of the variable, which should be equalized if we want equal outcomes for men and women and people of all ages. And I think now at this point in time, the way ahead is that we do need work on these challenges, there's no doubt about that, but we really need to push for greater use of fecal immunochemical testing in the younger age group, particularly if they present with the symptoms, as has been previously discussed, or even if they present with concerns that they have any possibility of lower abdominal cancers. Thank you very much.
You were on mute.
Oh, technology. So thank you very much, Professor Fraser. You did give us a lot of food for thought. Thank you very much again. Now we will hear again from a patient's perspective. So we're going to hear from Catel Marguet. She's a French researcher based in the Netherlands. Professionally, she has always been driven by data. But over the last few years, she has been driven more by experiences, sharing experiences, understanding patient experiences, and putting them to a good use. So Catel, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my experience today. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to try to share my screen first. So if you could just let me know if it's the right
It's the
slide.
right one, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh. Yeah. So yeah, a little bit about me. I'm French, as you can hear, but I've been living in the Netherlands for over 8 years now. And that's where I receive all my medical treatments. I've always had a very active lifestyle. I'm an outdoor fan. I exercised several times a week. I didn't drink at all. I never smoked, and there was no cancer in my family. However, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer at 40 and had symptoms for over a year, I would say. I had blood in my stools, and it started once a week, and I didn't take it seriously. I have also endometriosis, and the symptoms are very similar, meaning belly pain, fatigue. And I've been told for 30 years that pain was normal. So I didn't worry at all, even if that should have been red flags. And one more thing is I didn't know the symptoms of colorectal cancer at all. And for me, it was really an old people disease. I thought I was healthy. I didn't know anything about it. And looking back at even more symptoms, I went to give my blood, which I used to do on a regular basis, and I could not do it anymore because of anemia, and no one did anything about it. So after a few months, I decided to see my GP. At that time, I had blood in my stools every day. But she sent me home with paracetamol and told me to rest, that it should go away. I was also on a waiting list to have a surgery for endometriosis. And because of COVID, everything was on hold. I was on a waiting list. I asked at some point to have a colonoscopy, but it was the same. I was too young. It was COVID time. So I had no chance to get one. And finally, after a few more months, during the pre-op meeting with my gynecologist, I discussed the symptoms and had blood in my stools several times a day. And then she realized that it was far more serious than what she first thought. So she gave a call in order for me to have the colonoscopy, and I was booked within 1 week. And then, I was diagnosed with stage 3. I was at high risk due to the location of the tumor. And it was such a shock for me because first, I didn't really expect that it would be cancer. And the second part is I didn't expect it to be at such a high risk for me. I looked healthy. I thought I was healthy. And then I got the diagnosis of stage 3. And very quickly, we had to decide for the treatments. The first option would have been for surgery, but then because of my risk, we decided to follow the more standard protocol, meaning neoadjuvant radiotherapy. So I had 25 sessions. And one of the side effects is, of course, the menopause. And I was also in the process of trying to have a family. So that was something very difficult for me to go from wanting a family to being in menopause at 40. In one of the positive outcome, I had a complete response to the treatment. And then came the question, what do we do? Do we go for surgery, which is, of course, a very invasive one, and my quality of life would have been impacted? Or do we go for the wait-and-see protocol, which is having some specific controls, pretty intensive every 3 months? And then one interesting point, when we dig into the data with a surgeon, we realized that we didn't have enough data for patients of my age in the Netherlands. There are not so many cases and not so many people who are eligible for the wait-and-see protocol. So as I'm a researcher, I spend the weekend reading all I can find online worldwide, really to find evidences that I could really join that protocol, not have the surgery and still be safe, because of course there was a higher risk of recurrence, and I didn't want it to become stage 4 within a few months and not knowing it. But we went for it and had almost a year without any problems. And then during the 1-year sigmoidoscopy, we saw it live on screen, because in the Netherlands they don't do it with sedation and with painkillers. So we saw it directly on the screen. And then I had no other choice than go for the surgery. And the question was, do I want a permanent stoma, or do we try to go for a temporary one? And because of my lifestyle and my age, we saw that going for a temporary stoma was the best option for me. So I went for surgery. That was a very heavy one, 8 hours. And 3 months later, had my reversal, and had so many complications after it. The first 6 weeks, I didn't leave home. I would go to the bathroom 40 times a day, and I was so unpredictable that it was really not manageable. And very quickly also after it, I had a colon prolapse, which was also difficult to manage. And also a lot of pain from my stomach scar. So we tried several options, didn't work. I went for a new surgery a few months later. And I was really hopeful, thinking, okay, maybe now I can start again. But the prolapse came back, unfortunately, and my quality of life was really not at the level I wanted it. I couldn't really do anything outside. I really had like social anxiety going around people, and that's really not what I wanted at my age. So with surgeon, we decided to go for a permanent colostomy, which I had in December. And I also had a few complications, so I spent almost a full month of December at the hospital. So I think now with 7 surgery, I'm a VIP patient at the surgery department. So 5 weeks ago, I had a new surgery. Everything went well this time. I still need to be extremely careful, but I'm really hoping to have a recovery without any other complications. And why I share it today is for several things, of course. I could have been diagnosed much earlier, at least 1 year for sure, and my quality of life would have been better. Now I've got a colostomy plus several complications due to the different surgery and the radiotherapy. I cannot share it. I cannot change it. Yes, I can share it, but I cannot change it. So I decided to share it online and also today with you, because I really want to prevent others from going through the same path so early. I really want to raise awareness, not only for patients, but also for the medical community. I really don't want to hear anymore, you're too young, you look too good. I don't want any more delayed treatments. And the other point is, colorectal cancer remains such a taboo, especially among young people. And it should not be the case. Today, I also share openly that I've got a stoma. And yeah, for me, it's just normal. It's my life. I cannot change it. And it should not be a taboo anymore. And just to end my presentation on a positive note, I would like to say there's a life after colorectal cancer, even as an early onset one. It's certainly not what I would have planned, but it's up to me to reinvent it. And I really think that there are many things to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your story with us. As you have seen, people just loved your testimony. And as you said, it's never too young to get cancer. It's never too young to get checked. So we hope that people will get, the message of this meeting is to be your best advocate and to be your best, in a way, your best doctor. So having heard that wonderful testimony from Catel, we will move on now to what can be done about it. What's the way forward? And we have left that question to the very capable hands of Dr. Jose Perea Garcia. He is a principal investigator at the Biomedical Research Institute in Salamanca and also chief department of surgery at the Arturo Soraya Hospital and associate professor of surgery at the European University in Madrid. He is working on a collaborative platform among different centers in Spain, but also in Europe and in countries across the world on early onset colorectal cancer. He's also a director of Early Onset Colorectal Cancer International Symposium that takes place every year in Spain. So thank you very much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alexandra, and thank you very much, of course, Thais, with the opportunity to give this talk and the meeting that we are having today. So let's try to share my screen. Okay. Can you see it?
We see your screen, yes.
Okay, perfect. So the idea of the talk is specifically to try to explain what is going on now to solve the problem of early onset colorectal cancer, what are doing the researchers, the clinicians, and of course, patients and patient associations moving forward with this problem. This is a talk that I try to give with an overall perspective, but I'm not, of course, going to talk about the three first factors that some of you have already well talked. So I'm going to focus on the four last ones, and I think most of them are specifically for early onset colorectal cancer. One of those are disparities, because I think that specifically early onset colorectal cancer has got very specific issues about this kind of factor, and around different perspectives. For example, early onset colorectal cancer shows racial disparities according to location, according to prognosis. If we take on account, for example, in the USA, all the races are showing different prognosis regarding early onset colorectal cancer. Not only that, but also if we take on account specifically sex, the way of the prognosis of the locations of the diagnosis is completely different. If we see early onset colorectal cancer in males compare with females. So these are specific, a very interesting problem, but not only problem, but maybe an opportunity to develop the different stages about disparities. If you see in the slide, there are a lot of factors that are linked with disparities in this specific subtype of colorectal cancer, not only about system institutions, of course, the quality of care, health policy, healthcare system, but also the environmental, about the neighborhoods, community resources, and everything like that. And of course, maybe one of the most important are individual factors, as I have told, race, ethnicities, and of course sex, etc. So this is a very interesting factor that we should keep in mind in order to solve the problem of early onset colorectal cancer. What some of the researches that we are focused on early onset colorectal cancer are trying to develop what's going on about this specific subtype of colon cancer. And if you see all the literature, or most of the literature focusing on the research of early onset colorectal cancer, one of the main things that we try to see about it is to compare early onset colorectal cancer with late onset colorectal cancer. So we compare all the cases younger than 50 compared with the main colorectal cancer as we have known until a few years ago. So this maybe could be some approaches. One of the most interesting is the studies that in the beginning we started to compare early onset colorectal cancer regarding the carcinogenetic pathways, and we saw in the very beginning that if we compare, for example, the main pathways, for example, MSI, that is the one that is linked with Lynch syndromes, and we compare it in early onset colorectal cancer subpopulation with the late onset subpopulation, or the characteristics were completely different regarding sex, regarding location, regarding staging, etc. Not only that, but also the sporadic subtype of cases, MSS. If we compare early onset and late onset colorectal cancers, again, we saw a lot of differences regarding the phenotypes. These were some of the studies, but also some researchers focus on the pathogenic mutations that were shown if we compare late onset colorectal cancer with early onset colorectal cancer. And again, if we see the slides, we see a lot of differences regarding the pathogenic genes that are shown in both subpopulations. Not only that, but also, for example, APC, that is the one of the genes that is very well known in both in colorectal cancer. We compare the subpopulations between early and late onset. Then we see that the location of the mutations in this gene are completely different if we compare both populations. So again, I think this approach to study comparative analysis between both populations is very interesting. Again, the last approaches that are evolving in the last few years are very interesting. For example, this is a study that when they compare again early onset colorectal cancer with late onset colorectal cancer in the omics approaches. They study a lot of approaches, if you see in the slide, transcriptomic, metabolomic, proteomics, and then we are seeing that if we compare both subtypes of colorectal cancer, then again the pathways that are involved in both cancers seems to be at least some of them differential when we compare both populations. Apart from omics approaches, this is a very interesting work that has been published 3 years ago, and this is an Australian group that are very focused in colorectal cancer overall, but also in early onset colorectal cancer, and they have seen that in the mucosa of the colon of young individuals, not only in cancer but also in healthy tissue, they've shown that when they study methylome, so one of the pathways that are involved in colorectal cancer, they've seen that some markers, some genes that are related with methylations are related in young individuals with aging. So it is supposed that in the mucosa of the healthy colon, there are some markers that are involved in elder population and in aging. So it seems to be that maybe in these individuals of early onset colorectal cancer, some alterations are evolving faster compared with healthy individuals. This is a work that we published 2 years ago, and again related with aging, and we compare different populations with colorectal cancer, early onset and late onset, and also we compare healthy individuals with the same age, and we compare one of the markers that are related with aging, that is telomere length in those individuals that we can measure in blood. And we saw that in the individuals showing early onset colorectal cancer, this telomere length was completely shorter compared with late onset colorectal cancer and also younger individuals. Again, this is an interesting marker of aging, so maybe this could be not only a marker, but in the very next years we can study this approach in order to see if there is something about one of the causes of early onset colorectal cancer. Another approach that is very interesting and it's evolving in the last few years much compared with other approaches is the exposome and microbiome. So it is supposed that individuals with early onset colorectal cancer are exposed to some alterations, not only during the adulthood, but also in infancy and childhood. And this exposure are chronic, and this exposure develop chronic inflammation, and also these chronic inflammations drives to the alteration of the microbiome, and maybe these different microbiome alterations could be one of the drivers to the early onset colorectal cancer. Again, these approaches, this is a paper that was published 2 years ago, and the next slide is one of the last year. And when we compare microbiome in young individuals with early onset with colorectal cancer compared with late onset colorectal cancer, the populations in the microbiome in these individuals is completely different. So again, it seems to be something in the microbiome that drives to dysbiosis, that is the different alterations in these individuals that could be one of the drivers of the early onset colorectal cancer. This is the other manuscript that I have taught regarding the microbiome in early onset colorectal cancer, and it seems that the populations of microbiome in these individuals is completely different and could be some drivers, and it's also related with the location of the tumors and also some of the mutations that are linked with the early onset colorectal cancer. Finally, one of the two most interesting and important things that I think that it is we should keep in mind in this subtype of colorectal cancer is screening and, of course, the therapeutic strategies. So screening. There is a population younger than 50 that most of the cases are not covered by the general population screening nowadays in the guidelines, not only in the USA, but also mostly in Europe, for example. This is a study that was published by American group in 2021, and they try to fix which proportion of early onset colorectal cancer, according to the guidelines that were in the current guidelines of in the USA association, could be preventable if we take on account those guidelines. So if you see in the slide, only at 16% of cases could be preventable, prevented if we conducted those guidelines in the USA, and with that data in mind, we developed the same approach, but in Europe. And if we see the guidelines that have been covered by the European Society of Gastroenterology Endoscopy, we take those guidelines, and sadly, only a 5% of cases could be preventable if we keep in mind the guidelines that are now currently moving in Europe. So again, this is a very important problem. So finally, regarding the screening, if we take, for example, the more or less 20% of cases that could be explained by hereditary forms, and also the 5% that I have shown in the previous slide, we have at least 75% of cases that are not covered by the screening nowadays in the population in Europe. So one of the red flag that we should at least develop in the researcher and in clinic approaches is to look for biomarkers that could be linked with the risk of developing early onset colorectal cancer, in order to at least cover this subpopulation that nowadays are not covered by the guidelines. Finally, the treatment strategies, only 2 slides, just to underline that we have some of the patients have already remarked the importance of the treatment, because of which we have an important surgeries that could be carried out in these individuals, surgeries that have a lot of impact in the lifestyles, in the health, and everything like that should be an important remark to keep in mind, to develop new techniques, for example, not only laparoscopy, but also the robotic approaches, in order to avoid a lot of important factors that could be in the individuals in this subtype of colorectal cancer. Not only that, but also we should keep in mind that also these individuals are in the fertility part of their lives, not only fertility, but also sexual activity. And those approaches, I think it's very important to remark, compared, for example, with individuals that are in late onset colorectal cancer. So those approaches, surgery techniques, and also fertility, and for example, another patient has told large complication, are very important to keep in mind, to at least develop strategies to better to get better the healthy approaches in these individuals. So finally, I think these are the main factors that could be involved in early onset colorectal cancer development. But also, I think in order to try to move forward with the solution of this problem, starting with the predisposition, but also with exposure and all related with that, I think the underlying basis of this problem are maybe inflammation, immunity, metabolic alteration that maybe could be the key of the problems. And just to conclude, I think this problem is a worldwide problem, and not only a worldwide problem, but also the problem of researchers, clinicians, and of course patients. And I think the effort should be one thing that should put together all these people in order to move forward with the solution of the problem. So I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. So we have said that the question and answer session will be followed by all the presentations. So we've seen that you've taken an active part in the question and answer area of the Zoom platform. I think most of the questions have been answered by our team. If they haven't, just drop us a line, and we're always happy to answer the questions if we know the answer. If we don't know the answer, we'll find out the answer for you, and we'll connect you with the speakers if you want to. I know there's one question that just popped up recently that hasn't been answered yet, but maybe we can answer it live. It's for Professor Perea. Stephen Rowley is asking if gut microbiome can be used for screening. So if you could maybe quickly answer that one.
So nowadays, it is not used for that. Maybe in the future, hopefully shorter future compared with longer, maybe we could combine not only microbiome, but also some markers related with DNA that can be found in the stool, and all of them combined could be something that could be useful for screening. Or I think a lot of groups that are focused on early onset colorectal cancer we are trying to find out which markers could be important or essential to connect with the risk of developing early onset colorectal cancer. And one of them are focused on a stool, and other ones, of course, in blood, etc. And of course, seeing that microbiome shows differential phenotypes comparing young onset colorectal cancer, late onset colorectal cancer, and healthy individuals, I think that one could be a very interesting approach and a key one for trying to define screening strategies.
Okay, if we could just maybe ask you to on technical side to stop sharing your screen, because then the participants see a blank screen for the moment. Oh, thank you. Okay, we still have a few seconds left for questions, and I think we had a question also to Professor Spander asking whether air and water quality can be looked at in terms of risk factors for early onset colorectal cancer.
Thank you. Sorry, but can you repeat the question?
The question was whether air and water quality can be a risk factor as well.
Yeah, so as I told you, we do think because of the increasing incidence from the 1950s, there's so much happens in the world, and also with regard to air pollution and watery. But currently we don't have any data yet to correlate it with the early onset colorectal cancer. So based on the fact that we do think that a good microbiome and immunity space plays a role, we more think on other factors like the dietary factors and the environmental factors, as I showed you earlier. But still, as I told you, so much unknown yet.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add a comment to that, please?
Of course.
The air quality is an interesting issue because there is some work being done on particles in the air, and it's been shown that if there are significant numbers of particles in the air, then individuals have a higher fecal hemoglobin concentration. And it's important to note that there are obviously other causes of a high fecal hemoglobin concentration than colorectal cancer or colorectal neoplasia. And we have looked at in great detail people with diseases or conditions which have systemic inflammation have higher fecal hemoglobin concentration. So if an individual has a colonoscopy after a high fecal hemoglobin concentration and nothing is found of significance in colonoscopy, it could be that they have a disease such as diabetes, heart disease, intake of lots of particles in the air with systemic inflammation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then just for the matter of time, we will move on to the last part of our meeting today. So you've probably been sitting for 2 hours now, and we will ask you to move. But it won't be one of those, please get up and move your body types. We want you to start moving every day, more and forever. Not only today, not only now. So now we're going to present our campaign, which is all about getting everyone to move, getting everyone to get more awareness about the symptoms, and to present our this year's campaign for ECCAM. I'll hand over to my colleague, Ruel Jacob.
It's truly incredible how much we've accomplished together in just 12 short months. We have walked almost 500 million steps, a distance that would take us around the world several times over. We have even reached the moon. Your dedication and commitment to this cause have made this possible. Speaking of numbers, the STEP app has been downloaded over 1,000 times. But we can do even more. With your help, we can increase the number of users, empowering more people to stay motivated and fit, all while raising awareness about colorectal cancer. Today marks the beginning of our step-by-step campaign, an initiative that focuses on prevention. It's more than just counting steps now. It's about amplifying the stories behind each walk. Using STEP app, we encourage everybody to walk and submit pictures of their steps. We want to hear why you joined the campaign. Your pictures and stories may be featured on our social media platforms, inspiring others to join this important movement. They will also be showcased on our website gallery, allowing everyone to see and read about those who are walking for colorectal cancer. we've created a social media toolkit that's just a click away. Designed with your convenience in mind, these ready-to-use Canva templates are waiting for you to add your organization or company logo and even translate the copy into multiple languages. And that's not all. The ECCAM landing page is a powerful tool in raising awareness. It showcases the symptoms, the risks, and screening of colorectal cancer. It also includes a leaderboard with the number of steps taken across Europe, categorized by country and group. ECCAM 2024 holds particular significance for us. As you have already heard, we are proud to announce the launch of our new book, You Are Young, But It Might Be Cancer. This powerful collection of 16 stories shares the experiences of young adults living with colorectal cancer. Through their inspiring journeys, we are reminded of why we dedicate ourselves to this cause. We are in this together. We have the power to make a real impact for ourselves and for the people around us, walking towards a healthier lifestyle and raising awareness on colorectal cancer.
Right, thank you very much, Rel, and thank you to all the speakers today. We hope you have learned something today. We hope you will take positives towards prevention and raising awareness. As usual at DICE, we are always at your service. If you have any questions, we are here for you. You can reach out to us. You can follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter, and we hope to see you later this year at the Colorectal Cancer Screening Summit, as usual, at the end of November. Recording of this event will be on our website, so will be the presentations. So with that, I wish you a very, very active day and an even more active weekend. Thank you very much for your attendance and see you soon.